Welcome to Major Week. It is the final one of the year, unfortunately, but it should be a good one because Royal St. George's historically plays really tough, even by Open Championship or British Open standards. So I always love that. I guess based on my U.S. Open T-shirt, you could probably figure that out. But my favorite golf courses, my favorite events are always whenever it's going to play tough, and Royal St. George's just plays tough. So it's going to be fun. So welcome on in to the FanDuel PGA Q&A for this week. I'm your host, Brandon Gdula. I'm the managing editor over at numberFire.com. I'll be talking about the field, the betting odds on FanDuel Sportsbook, the daily fantasy slate on FanDuel, my win simulation model, and whatever else you want because this is a Q&A format. So get those questions ready. Hit up the comments section on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. If you do have any such questions, also, as you can see here at the bottom of the screen, Erin Dolan will be on at 4:30 talking NBA betting. So stick around, get those questions prepped as well. But I'm here to break down the Open Championship. I'm going to start, as I always do, by looking at the top of the field from a betting standpoint. Jon Rahm coming in as a heavy favorite at plus 750, coming in off a 7th at the Scottish Open whenever he did lead pretty substantially in strokes gained. Tee to green. Before that, U.S. Open win. Before that, a barring disaster to win the Memorial. So he could be entering with 3 straight wins. So yeah, this number's short, but that's what we're looking at with Jon Rahm, just in the best form of any golfer on the planet right now. Brooks Koepka always near the top of the odds board. Or I guess not always, but he's back at the top of the odds boards come major time. Xander Schauffele is always my guy, 18-1, same as Justin Thomas, who historically has not played the Open particularly well. Jordan Spieth has 18-1, so that's a pretty nice trio there this week. But Rory McIlroy, 22-1, and then Dustin Johnson is actually back up to the number one golfer in the world, 25-1. I know the form has been a little bit iffy, but spoiler alert, my win simulation model actually valued DJ at 25-1. So I think he's becoming a very fair value for the week. And then we have a really strong tier after that at 30-1 and beyond. But with an Open, when we're talking betting odds, we tend to get nicer returns or nicer opportunities so long as someone like Jon Rahm doesn't win, as he did. Louis Wee stays in with someone I was on for the U.S. Open, and it just didn't work out. But typically when we get an Open or an Open Championship at any major, we get good odds on just some stellar golfers. Someone like Colin Morikawa making his Open debut at 35-1. That's still appealing because you don't have to have necessarily course knowledge like we do at Augusta, but it's a really strong field. And then that trickles over into FanDuel from a daily fantasy standpoint, where salaries get a little bit lower for golfers who are very, very good. And based on the research I've done, whenever we get a tough field, we get a little bit more top-heavy results. Fewer values pop up because there's just of the sheer volume of top golfers that we have in a field. And on top of that, it's going to play tough. It's not going to be a birdie fest. And the tougher the course, the bigger the advantage for the best golfers. That's why majors tend to separate virtually all of the best from like the sprinkle of the outliers who do show up. But we've had a lot of birdie fests on the PGA Tour lately, and that's not going to be the case by any means at Royal St. George's for this week. Now, I tend to look at Data Golf for some shot length information, depending, trying to see which of the 4 stats from a shot length data lead to scoring dispersion and explain how golfers separate. We don't have shot length data from the Open Championship, so we have to do some assumptions. We have to look at things like just driving distance, driving accuracy, scrambling. It's not ideal, but we can only do what we have access to. And we can go back through here, through the leaderboard, and we can look at the winning scores. 15 under, 8 under, 12 under, 20 under. This is such an outlier here, and I love it, but I also hate it. Phil, I mean, I don't know what else you could ask for there for a showing from Phil Mickelson. But actually, on numberFire, I do have a detailed course primer for this week and each week moving forward. Past 5 winning scores at this particular course for the Open, so spanning back, enough years that it takes to get back to 5 Open championships at Royal St. George's. 5 under, 1 under, 13 under, 2 over, and 4 under being the winning scores there. So not necessarily as easy to score as your typical Open. Now, your typical Open is about 9 under par for the winning score, but at Royal St. George's, 4.2 under par, so it makes it the second most difficult venue to host the Open Championship since 1980. So we're looking at an even more difficult course, and from a FanDuel standpoint, it's important to keep that in mind because this week it's going to be less about birdies and more about avoiding bogeys, and a significantly higher portion of your FanDuel scoring is going to come from finishing positions. You're not really going to have someone finish 40th but have made a ton of birdies and lose it all back with bogeys, which is actually more advantageous from a fantasy standpoint. We just need the golfers to finish well, and so that does put an emphasis on the best golfers, which sounds so obvious, but in majors it's really hard to stress it. You can always look back to a major and pinpoint some of these outlier names, but that's just not super predictive. We're looking at maybe 5 outlier names in the top 15 out of the hundreds that are down there. So it's just, you want to make sure that you're considering balance and you're considering an opportunity cost whenever you are going way down the list. Question from Bethany. Hi, Bethany, on YouTube. This question is for me. Rumor has it that I've not yet drafted Chris Conley in the Scott Fish Bowl. That's true. My question to you is, when are you going to make your move? How late is too late? I mean, Chris Conley, I think I probably should have taken in the first round just to lock him up. But with the quarterback situation uncertain with Houston, figured I could wait a little bit more. But I do have every intention of drafting Chris Conley in the Scott Fish Bowl. Another question on YouTube from Clint. Who's your grade A value picks? So I can jump ahead to value picks, I guess, because I pretty much covered what I wanted to from a course standpoint. Again, it's going to play difficult. We have some longer holes. I think that's important to keep in mind. But again, this information's up on numberFire.com. So are my win simulations. But just quickly, I guess, before I move on to the value plays, and it'll help explain a little bit why I like some value plays, or maybe don't like too many value plays. Strokes gain approach, good drive rate, which is actually a fairway hit, or if you miss a fairway, that you still make the green in regulation. Greens in regulation are going to be really hard to get this week. Strokes gained putting, scrambling / strokes gained around the green, and bogey avoidance. But that just adds up to driver, irons, wedges, and putter, which is every facet of the game. But every time we get a major, that kind of separates the golfers, and you should really take some pause looking at golfers who do have red flags in their game, which is usually those value golfers. But I will jump over and go over my grade A value picks for Clint. Let me jump over to my spreadsheet here. And I will feature some of my favorite value names for the Open Championship. I'm going to start here with, I don't know if I never know if he's Alex Noren or Alexander Noren on any of my spreadsheets. So I'll go with Alex Noren. Who else am I liking this week? Robert McIntyre. And I'm not alone in that. He's a plus 6,500 on FanDuel Sportsbook. And then Lucas Herbert really came onto my radar. Not someone I featured in my write-up on numberFire, but I will probably add him because Zach Johnson did withdraw, and Johnson was one of the low-end value plays that I liked. But Noren rates out really well, typically on in Opens. He's had a good track record at Opens, and he just has a really good short game, which makes him someone I don't typically like to target. I'll actually hide birdies here because I'm not looking at birdies for this week. But Noren typically is just not a golfer I like to target because he's really dependent on his short game. 79th percentile in adjusted around the green, 81st percentile in adjusted putting over the past calendar year, according to my database. It's the ball striking that is not particularly good. But this week, you don't necessarily have to hit your driver especially well. Although there are some reports that the rough is kind of problematic, which is not that typical for a link style course. It's usually just not heavy rough, but It's probably a little bit overblown. You always hear about rough being problematic, but Alexander Noren also just a really good baseline golfer for his salary. Positive 0.6 adjusted strokes per round over the past year, according to my database there, and a pretty solid bogey avoider. So we're getting someone who's a good bent grass putter, just good short game. You're not going to hit a ton of greens in regulation, and if you don't, because it's going to play, that's a Justin Ray tweeted about this. He tweets about all the good stats in golf, but Royal St. George's, I believe this is, I'm getting this right, has the 2 of the 3 lowest greens in regulation ranks among all Open championships since 2003. So, it's typically hard to hit greens in regulation, but it's especially hard at Royal St. George's. So you need your guys to scramble and have those good wedges and good putter. So if you're not going to hit all the greens in regulation, you got to do that, and that's why I like Alex Noren for this week. Robert McIntyre, again, this is all PGA Tour data. So I tend to, with guys with maybe larger European Tour samples, look mostly at the overall stats that I have, and I will pull him up on Data Golf because they pull the European Tour stats, which is a great resource to have. But McIntyre is a plus golfer over the past year. He's super long off the tee, and he was 6th at the Open in 2019, which is the most recent one. But Lucas Herbert, again, all these red flags here. I don't think this will actually do him justice, but I'm just going to pull up Herbert and McIntyre on Data Golf because that's one of the shortcomings of just using PGA Tour data. McIntyre and Herbert, I'll pull them up both, do ranks over the past 6 months. So McIntyre, obviously the better choice here from that standpoint, rating pretty well and adjusted off the tee, according to Data Golf over the past 6 months. Pretty solid wedges. Herbert, a little more putting dependent, but Herbert's recent finishes are quite strong. Has a 4th on the European Tour last week at the Scottish Open, a win before that, and then 2 top 20s on the PGA Tour. It's always important for majors not to get too heavy into like European Tour stats, because according to Data Golf and according to like official World Golf rankings, for the most part, the European Tour is about as tough as the Korn Ferry Tour, and so you wouldn't overreact too much to golfers with consecutive top 5s, including a win on the Korn Ferry Tour. So just keep that in mind. But he has been gaining strokes with the ball striking in both of those Euro Tour events, but also on the PGA Tour. So gaining strokes off the tee once adjusted for field and with approach. And again, we see him be a good putter. So Herbert's in really good form. It's kind of recent form, but we did see him 31st at the US Open as well. So I like that. And then McIntyre himself, just kind of an outlier from an odd standpoint relative to his FanDuel salary, but 18th at the Scottish Open, 35th at the US Open. Again, good ball striking here. That's what we want to see. Green here and tee to green. We can throw in wedges there. And the putter, maybe not the best for him career-wise, but close to baseline here this season. So McIntyre, Herbert, and Noren kind of have been the guys that I've been settling on most to build around from a value standpoint. Comment from Bethany: Brandon, you're the greatest. No, Bethany, you are the greatest. Question from Robert on YouTube: what about McIntyre? So I just went over McIntyre. I think he's a really strong play for the most part. I don't think that he is, well, I can say for sure he's not someone I have interest in betting at 65-1 because there is this putting concern. And while putting can come and go in a week, you also want to see a little bit more from the high end to really want to bet long shots. I also don't really bet long shots in majors just because if you go back through the major list, unsurprisingly, it's the studs. So McIntyre more for like a top 10 or top 20 I like, but especially on FanDuel with that salary of $8,500 makes a ton of sense because the tee to green game has been pretty good and the irons have been improving to some degree. Question from Mr. Jackie Moon on Twitch. Hello, everyone. Hope you've all had a good weekend so far. So not a question, but or a good week so far. Not weekend yet, unfortunately. But thankfully, we do get the golf a little bit early this week, especially early. So the weekend will feel like it comes a little bit early. But I hope you're having a good week as well, Jackie Moon. Question from Brandon on Facebook. What's your thoughts on Daniel Berger? So Berger is someone I've struggled with a ton because if you haven't tuned in before, I love Daniel Berger because he's a really strong statistical player. And that is obviously how I get to a lot of my conclusions. But Berger himself has been, he played the John Deere, so he's traveling. That's not something that's super typical for the top line studs this week. But Berger is that, right? Like he is that based on the past 6 months, 8th in total strokes gained average once adjusted for field strength. Really strong tee to green. Doesn't really have any red flags here. The around the green play, not ideal, but definitely not too bad. And we know that Berger has that ability to at least play baseline around the greens. Good putter, good ball striker. So I like Berger. You can't really argue too much with these results. At a salary of $10,000 on FanDuel, I think it's very fair, but I would probably bump him down a little bit just because of the travel and go with someone like Scotty Scheffler instead. Heads up, even though it's a little bit scary because Berger is honestly just a fantastic golfer and always tends to outperform expectations in my win simulation model. But I like Berger. There is just a little bit of possibly unnecessary risk. Question from Mr. Jackie Moon on Twitch. Biggest favorite to avoid? So my fade for the week is going to be Justin Thomas. Not necessarily because it's anything against Thomas himself. It's just there are so many golfers to like that we have to rule out someone. I think you could also lump in Bryson in that conversation, but Bryson's betting odds are 35-1, I believe, and JT's down to 18-1 after a top 10 at the Scottish Open. Yeah, so 18 and 35 respectively. I mean, JT rates out fine in my win simulation model, but if I'm picking between the studs from a FanDuel standpoint, I like Xander Schauffele more, and I like Jordan Spieth more as well compared to JT. JT, not really a great putter on any surface, and Open Championships are not really about putting. What does scare me about fading him is that his wedge play is amazing, but he has not historically been that great at Open Championships in the past. Was 11th in 2019, but just kind of middling before that. So again, it's more of I got to pick someone. It's going to be JT, who I just don't quite get to this week, but Bryson also from a FanDuel standpoint, I don't particularly like, although I would consider betting Bryson at 35-1 if that drops a little bit more. Question from Christopher on YouTube, Rom or Thomas? That's Rom for me easily. I know that's kind of a safe play because Rom is such a big favorite, but he's more than twice as likely to win than JT in my win simulation model. Rom coming in at 8%, obviously leading the field there at that number, which is not enough to bet him at plus 750. But for Rom, it's just the putting does separate him, specifically on bent grass. Rom is just a really good putter for someone who's so good tee to green. Just the best long-term adjusted form in the field. Honestly, like I said, could have 3 straight wins entering this week. So he will be chalky, but I tweeted about this. The most popular golfers in any of the 3 majors this year have been coincidentally Justin Thomas at the Masters, who's around 35% on FanDuel, and Spieth was around 32%. But those are the only 2 golfers who cracked a 30% popularity rate on FanDuel. So yes, Rom is probably going to be around 35%, but that's not really that drastic. All things considered, there are hundreds of ways to differentiate. And Rom's made cut odds are almost 85%. So the odds that Jon Rahm has a complete dud are totally okay. Still playing Jon Rahm in tournaments, just probably trying to be in line with the field, maybe a little bit over. Around 40% of my lineups might have Jon Rahm. But I would say straight up for sure Jon Rahm. Question from Robert. Thomas Dietrich, not someone I looked into. I will go to Data Golf for Dietrich here. So let me see his recent numbers. I don't like to get too into. Okay, I can see why you asked. The 2 runners up in recent results with the cuts. So this is actually this would probably be a profile that I would point to and like screenshot and say, this is what you want to be a little bit cautious of looking at results. Dietrich doesn't typically gain off the tee very often. And overall this season, just a positive 0.1 once adjusted for field strength per round off the tee and strokes gained. The iron play was great at the Scottish Open, but that's not predictive. That's not necessarily going to last week to week, especially from someone who is a subpar or kind of world average iron player. The around the green play is going to be vital this week, not one necessarily to gain with the wedges, and his strong finishes would very easily be boosted by the putting, specifically last week. So I'm going to be out on Dietrich. I think that there would be better alternatives for this week. Question from Clint on YouTube. One standout mid-range. That's going to be Scotty Scheffler for me, if we can count him. I think that's fine at 9,700. The only concern with Scheffler is honestly that he hasn't played in an Open before. But he has managed to keep his ball striking pretty strong, specifically with driver, while increasing his strokes gained around the green and putting. I'll actually go back to Data Golf because this great tool, again, this is free, so everyone should be using this. But you can filter this by the types of strokes gained. So his off the tee play, staying pretty level, dipping a little bit lately, but not much. The irons dipped a bit, trending back up. But the around the green play really had improved since he came on to the scene. And then the putting, if I'm not mistaken, he's on a bit of a surge there. Now you want to be cautious of upswings in putting, but he's also a young player, and data shows that younger players are golfers. We should buy into these changes more with younger players than older players, and Scheffler definitely fits the younger player vibe there. So I think Scheffler is a great play, and he's just been awesome overall at majors. If you look at his history, he's got 5 straight top 20s, 3 top 10s, 2 straight top 10s. So I'm not really worried about too much with Scotty Scheffler. And honestly, on FanDuel this week, the low 9,000 range does drop off a bit, and I'd rather just be down in the 8,000 range. So for me, Scheffler is a standout mid-range play. Question from Chris: do pairings matter? If so, how do you weight them when picking players? I'm assuming that means like playing partners. I would have to think they matter. I have always been fascinated by this, but I don't have enough data on it. Specifically playing like with Tiger Woods, now playing with Bryson, does that affect things? We also need to make sure the samples are big enough. I don't actually account for that. If you're talking about pairings in terms of like player combinations on FanDuel, I think one specific way that you could maybe get some leverage each and every week is to pick an archetype of golfer. So maybe this week, driving distance or driving stats overall are a little bit open-ended. But if you want to say, I'm going to play the guys who just hit it the longest, and if it turns out that driving distance becomes like the overwhelming stat to target, and you build a lineup or 2 or 3 that are centered on big hitters, that could be a really strong way. It could be that you go the other way and say, if the rough is bad and distance isn't enough to get you out of the rough or make up for the penalty of missing a fairway, and you go with more accurate hitters for lineups, that's probably something that is long-term, a little bit of a successful strategy. But I would imagine playing partners do matter, but I don't have any hard data on that, so I can't really speak to that too much more. Question about Louis Oosthuizen. So I love Louis. Pretty much every. I don't know why I try to spell Oosthuizen while talking through it. I can spell it, but not while I'm talking, so I just got self-conscious there. But Louis 30-1, someone I loved in recent majors and almost got him until Jon Rahm chased him down, and Louis also helped himself be chased down. But the only concern really I have about Louis is just the salary of 11,100. I don't think that's necessarily enough for me. I think that's too much for me from what I see with Louis. Although honestly, Louis Oosthuizen in majors is not a bad bet. Pretty much anytime we get Louis in a major. So it's, again, kind of similar to JT, where it's not like I see stuff in here to dislike about Louis. It's more that I just prefer other golfers overall. Chris did playing partners. Yeah. So again, I think that there's got to be some sort of tangible effect for really playing with really slow players, playing with golfers who draw big crowds. Even it could be even Ricky Fowler, who still can draw some crowds. I know obviously we're going to lose a whole year of data without crowds, but playing with Ricky or playing with Phil, possibly now that there's Tiger is not playing, that could have a tangible effect. But unfortunately, again, I don't have the data for it. So I think that honestly, I covered a lot that I wanted to cover. I will say that my favorite DFS studs for the week are going to be Jon Rahm, because I don't think that the popularity is going to be quite so big that we have to fade him. And with how consistent that Rahm is and how he does it, it's just by being good everywhere. I'm totally cool with Rahm at the top. I also love Xander Schauffele from a DFS standpoint. So that's kind of where I'm starting my lineups this week with Rahm, Xander, and then also Patrick Cantlay, who I do like. I think I set up my Sims table here. That's the messy version. This is the cleaned up version. But Cantlay is rating out as an even value for me as an outright bet at plus 3,300 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Xander, slightly positive expected value. Of course, as I already alluded to, Jon Rahm, pretty big negative just because he needs to be around 11.8% likely to win to be an even value, and that's just not where I have him. And then one of the most interesting names now at this point has been Dustin Johnson, who is now 25-1. That's a pretty wild number for the world's number one. I know that the form is not spotless by any means, but we're also getting someone who, I need to go Johnson here. Just someone who can obviously win majors, and we're getting kind of a buy low on him. So he missed the cut at the PGA when he had bad iron play. 10th at Congaree, which is a really weak field, but this does adjust for field strength, so pretty good showing there. 19th at the US Open, good putting, poor wedge play, but good ball striking. 25th at the Travelers. This is, and I tweeted about this before either the Masters or the PGA, but like major winners don't necessarily have flawless form entering. We saw that with like Phil Mickelson, obviously. Hideki had some question marks, especially with the putter. Like we see major winners not come out of nowhere, but not necessarily be in, it's like all top 10 leading in. That's not the case. So I think DJ is becoming just super, super fascinating from a betting standpoint. And I would assume the sentiment on him this week is quite low from a FanDuel standpoint. So he could be a really strong pivot for this week. But with Rahm and Brooks and Spieth being overvalued according to my win simulation model, we see value a little bit down the board, specifically with Tony Finau. He's coming off 2 missed cuts with poor ball striking, but the long-term sample on Finau is really, really strong. He's been good. It opens 4 straight really strong showings. I believe 2 top 10s in there, if I'm remembering right. I can't get the Webb Simpson quite just because I don't know how his health is. Daniel Berger, as someone asked me before, love Daniel Berger overall, and the win simulation model does love him as well at 70-1. I think it's a really strong bet. I think he's a great DFS play. One final question from Robert about Brian Harman before we bring on Erin Dolan to answer questions about the NBA Finals. Just quickly, Brian Harman, a name that I'm not super in on, but one thing we can always check out on Data Golf is just his ranks compared to the official World Golf Rankings. Really strong statistical player, but the short game is kind of what's driving him overall, and not necessarily going to gain a ton of strokes with his approach play, but he can do it overall. So that's all the time that I have for today. I'm going to bring on Erin Dolan, and hopefully you had plenty of time to get your NBA questions ready for tomorrow, for tomorrow's game, game 4 between the Bucks and the Suns. So Erin, what's up? Yeah. How's it going?
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Good. Just obviously talking some open, but excited to hear what you have to say about game 4, because it's been overall actually a really tight series, because the net rating for the Bucks is now just a -0.2. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about the series.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Obviously, the Bucks continue to surprise us as the roller coaster that they are. So it's definitely going to be a pivotal game 4. I'm sorry, guys. I just got back from Miami, and I'm still low-key a little bit hungover from Miami, as you can hear my voice. But we're going to get through this show, and we're also going to talk some U.S. Open and some other things. But thank you for holding it down for us, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck.
Yes, thank you. All right, what's up, guys? I feel like it has been a while, as I'm sure you saw on Twitter and on Instagram. We were in Miami with our DFS players. There were 75 players playing for game 3, so we got to watch it on a yacht, which was insane in Miami with the coolest backdrop ever. And of course, I saw the Bucks surprise us in game 3. Per usual, the roller coaster that they are, they play well at home. Chris Middleton always plays better at home. And then we have game 4 coming up, and they could tie the series. We're going to talk a lot about that, some of the odds that are available on the FanDuel Sportsbook for today. Very excited for that. And then we'll also talk about, might as well talk about the USA men's Olympic team. They're going to be playing Argentina today. We have the MLB All-Star game today. So there's not a full slate of games to be betting on, but of course, some fun things that are happening today and some later in the week. And then tomorrow, of course, is that game 4. But unfortunately, I won't be on tomorrow's show, which is why today I'm coming on here and talking so much about it. So guys, fill the comments with all the questions that you have. I'll try to answer as many as possible. It's Mr. Jackie Moon. I feel like you're always on here. Thank you so much. Bucks helped me out. I'm glad they helped you out. And then you said, who are you leaning for the game tomorrow? So we'll go through the game. There's a part of me that wants to say Bucks, but every time I take them, it never works out in my favor. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Suns were able to cover, but the Bucks did win this other one at home, tie up the series. They're used to doing this at this point. So, but what scares me about the Bucks, as soon as they go on the road, they're terrible. They're a roller coaster. I still think Suns win in 6. But why don't we get into a little bit what happened in that game 3? Because I wrote some notes. Milwaukee winning 120-100. Bucks won their first NBA Finals game since 1974. Middleton had 15 first-half points. Holiday had 3-pointers and an explosive third quarter. So he finally woke up there. This is where the Suns went a little disarray. So the Suns missed 12 of 14 attempts from three-point range in the first half. PJ Tucker and Holiday bottled up Devin Booker. He had 10 points, 3 of 14 in 29 minutes. So I would expect to see some type of positive regression from him. I felt like on the big screen, you could see how disappointed his face was. And eventually, by the end of this game, a lot of the stars were sitting anyways. It was basically a wash. So we kind of have to wait and see how this upcoming game goes. They could be able to take a lead, the Bucks, by that much and have what happened happen. They shot terribly. But speaking of that, looking at this, yeah, you can see here, Suns, 29%, 9 of 31. Well, they weren't bad from field goals, but free throws, terrible. 11 of 16 when originally in game 1, they were one of the best free throw teams in the NBA. They went 25 of 26, I believe, in the first game. So that obviously needs to change. And then having just 17 points in that second quarter, that needs to change. Obviously, the Bucks, very dominant. Giannis, back-to-back 40-point games. I feel like for this game, they're going to try to contain him, obviously. So we'll talk about some of his player props because maybe we should take the under on certain things. But were kind of the little gist, the notes. I know it was an opener Milwaukee, -3.5, closed -4. So people were betting that up. Congrats on everybody who cashed on Milwaukee covering. It doesn't happen as often as it does for the Phoenix Suns. As for the total, it was 222.5, and then it closed 220, and there was a push. It's Mr. Jackie Moon saying Crowder 5+ threes. Interesting one. Interesting. He obviously played well last game. He was hot. The entire team, aside from Crowder, combined for 3 for 24 from long range. So I'm not sure if I can bet on Crowder 5+ threes in this game because, as you know, in that first game, he played so terrible. But he had a great standout game. But I feel like that's kind of been happening in this series. There's not one consistent player that's unreal. I guess you could argue that was Giannis in the last 2 games, a 40-plus point performance. And then you had CP3, who was that first game, I would say, the hero of that. But yeah, let's go through some of the lines, though, for the game. But actually, let me do something else before we get into that. This was a beautiful same-game parlay. They cashed for Game 3. As you know, same-game parlays, unique to FanDuel. You can find all this right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook. This guy, $25 down, and he won over $2,000. But yeah, that's great. Look at this. Ayton, he's been great. Over 15.5 points. Giannis over 32.5 points. I need my glasses on. Crowder, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Chris Middleton over 2.5 made threes. Love it. Love to see it. All right, let's get to this game. So the Bucks right now laying 4.5 points, total at 220.5. Like I mentioned last game, it was at 220 when it closed, and that was a push. Now, this opened Milwaukee -4, so it's only been bet up 0.5 point. It did open 220.5, was bet down to 220, which is basically nothing. But as you can tell, we are currently at, like I mentioned, -4.5, total 220. As for the money line, -178 for Milwaukee, the Suns +150. Still see good value on the Suns here. Okay, here's some trends that I found online that I think will help you. Phoenix, 14-4 against the spread in their last 18 games after a straight-up loss. 15-3 straight up in their 18 games following a straight-up loss as well. But for the Bucks, which is a hotter trend, they are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 home games. The Bucks play well at home, which is what is going to be the biggest advantage for this game, is seriously the fact that they play at home. Will Giannis be able to have 3 straight games of 40-plus points? I'm not sure about that. They're going to try to do something to contain him. But I think the Suns cannot shoot as bad as they shot in Game 3. I truly don't. They're not going to be able – I mean, this is terrible. 29% from them. They're usually better from that. Free throws, terrible. Devin Booker wasn't great, obviously. And speaking of that, when looking at some of the futures odds, let's see. You can see for the NBA Finals MVP, Chris Paul continuing to move out. He's -240. Giannis drops down +220. Devin Booker moves out to 12-1 after Game 3. Everybody else falls down behind him. As I mentioned before on the show when we were talking about this market, that some of the long shots, let's say like Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, I didn't really see a chance of them being able to win this. And obviously after seeing how they're playing, I don't think that's going to be the case compared to Giannis. So the only great value I would say in this market right now for me would be Giannis +220. CP3 at -240, that's not going to happen in my estimation. We also have some other markets available that are underneath, as you can see now. For example, in total assists, we have CP3 -174, Drew Holiday +142. Just want to mention in assists that they're averaging so far in this series, the NBA Finals, CP3 is averaging 9, Holiday is averaging 8. So I kind of feel like there is some type of value right on Holiday +142. But you know that Chris Paul is just so good at assists. He's the assist god in my eyes of the series. So wouldn't be surprised if he won, but the only value that would be in that market for me would be on Drew Holiday. Then you have most total rebounds. Giannis is averaging 14. Ayton is averaging 13. And I feel like Ayton has been so great for this team, the Suns team. So at +186, I do like that. Now, as for series point average, so we talked about this before Game 1. Devin Booker was actually at 28.5. It's already down to 25.5. And he's averaging, I believe, 22 points in this series already. Obviously, that 10 points last game did not help him whatsoever. Somebody just commented, Lopez seems to go quiet. Why? I think that Giannis going into the game and playing this entire series so far is why he went quiet. He had that one standout game when Giannis was not in. But yeah, we actually had a market for Lopez series point average. It was 14.5. I believe it was bet down to 13.5. And then it's not even on the board anymore. As you can see, you have Chris Paul. We have Ayton. Again, he's been great. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. So some of the stars have the markets available. I believe Brook Lopez was up before that Game 1 because we were unsure of Giannis's status. And considering he had that great game against the Hawks when Giannis was taken out, I'm sure they wanted to put those odds up to make sure that they had one of the technically stars of the Bucks be on there. But yeah, so these are the ones that are available right now for the player futures. As for, let's see, other markets, outright betting, Suns -270, they move out. Bucks +200. Obviously, the value right here would be on the Bucks if you think that they can get it done. Also, you can still bet on the correct score and the series spread, which continues to change. The Bucks +1.5, -134. Suns -1.5, +110. We also have the total games. If you think it's 5 games, for me, I think Phoenix wins in 6, +155. Originally, when I said Suns in 6, let me see. I believe that was at +440 when I had said that. So I had better value then, but as you can see, there's still plus money for you guys to have. Alrighty, so that's kind of all we have on the NBA. Again, this game is happening tomorrow. Oh, we could go through some props, actually. Let's do that before we get into some of the US Open and things. As you can see, we updated our website. You probably saw your app update as well. So this is much more easier to look at than jumping through each individual market. So Booker, the fact that his 27.5 is a little surprising to me. I guess they're assuming he's going to have a standout game after those 10 points, which wouldn't surprise me because you want to see positive regression. 27.5, though, I don't know if I could personally take that. I feel like that's a little high for him, especially since he's only averaging 23 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds this series. Before that, in all the other games in series, he was 26 points. So I'm surprised it's a 27.5. I think I like the under on that. Chris Paul, 21.5. He's averaging 25 points in this series, so I like the over on that. Then Ayton, I feel like he's just been great. Just keep betting the over on everything for him. So those are some of the player points. Let's see some of the match bets. What do we have going on here? Okay, heavy favorite. Heavy favorite. I think I'd still like Middleton there, but I wouldn't bet that. Heavy favorite again. So, as you know, guys, player rebounds, player assists, player threes, player combos, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. There are so many things you can bet on the FanDuel Sportsbook, as you can tell, aside from some of the futures things that are in that market. Same game parlay, like I mentioned before, always take advantage of this. You can combine all these bets into one same game parlay, put a little bit of money on it, and if it hits, great for you. You'll be obviously cashing out on that, and everybody wants to cash out on a same game parlay. For somebody saying, what's your prediction? I think that the Suns, as an underdog, could cover in this game. There's no way that they shoot as bad as they did. They'll figure out something for Giannis. There's no way I could see. The Bucks are such a roller coaster to me that although I know they play so well at home, like this could be a situation where the Suns blow them out and I just be like, yeah, it's the Milwaukee Bucks. Here we go again. Like that's the type of mentality I have with them. So I think they'll be able to cover. In terms of the total, let me find the one trend for the total. The total is 6-0-1 to the over head-to-head between these two teams. So in the first game, I know it opened 217.5, was bet up to 219. And then we hit the over on that one. It was a push in game 3. We hit the over in game 2 as well. So this opened 220.5. I mean, the trends are saying over, but if this should be a more defensive game and maybe shut down Giannis, then I would say potentially more so the under. But again, I mean, the totals aren't the most exciting things to bet on. Are the player performance doubles on there? They should be. Let's see. Right here. Player performance doubles. A ton of them. People have been loving the player performance doubles. I mean, if you're looking at it just aesthetically, all this plus money, the only thing that's at minus money is Giannis to have a double-double and Milwaukee to win -128. Anything else, you guys can go into this market. And it's not just double-double. I mean, PJ Tucker, 1+3 and Milwaukee to win. There's so many different things you can bet on. Chris Paul, 10+ assists. Phoenix to win, +480. Again, just giving you an example, not one that I like. Yeah, these are all available. Everything is up, which is something that's really cool about these finals games. Since you have a few days in between, you are able to kind of really go in and deep dive into some of these markets as opposed to seeing the markets become available at, let's say, 7 a.m. in the morning, East Coast time, and the games being at night. This way, you're able to see everything already, go through some of these markets, and yeah, kind of just get things rolling. But again, that game tomorrow, then we have game 5 on Saturday. Game 6 would be next Tuesday, and then still waiting to see when game 7 would be. Either way, no one on either team has an NBA Finals ring. So that's saying something there. And there's going to be history. There's going to be history between either of these teams. But aside from that, that game happened, of course. And as I mentioned, I got to watch Johnny Yacht because FanDuel is just the coolest company ever. I cannot rave enough about that. We also had the NBA US team yesterday, the Olympic team. What a tragedy. They've lost 2 straight exhibition games. I don't know what's going on with them. I'm a little concerned. A lot of people saying they're lacking a lot of chemistry, which clearly they're lacking a lot of chemistry. But as you can see right now in the FanDuel Sportsbook, Team USA laying 17.5 right now. The total at 183.5. Now, earlier today, I saw this USA minus 19.5. So this seems to be being bet down, or maybe people are backing Argentina just given that they've lost the last 2 games. As for the total, it moved up a point. Oh, there we go. Just changed again. Minus 183. Let me find some of the trends for you guys on this, though. Quickly before we move on to the US Open, I'm sure Brandon was holding us down with that. And again, any questions, please drop. I'm going to get to some in 2 minutes as soon as I find. All right, let's see. So again, like I mentioned, losing consecutive exhibition games, lost to Nigeria on Saturday, Australia 91-83. They had an 11-point halftime lead. They held Australia to just 13 points in that second quarter and still lost. I feel like it's been all over the TV all day, as well as, of course, the home run derby, which I will get to as well. I mentioned it lacking chemistry and execution, but, you know, I mean, they were favored against Nigeria by 29.5 points. I mean, then against Australia, 17.5 points. We are now in the same situation right now where they're favored by 17.5 points. So I don't really have a lot of great advice on how to bet this. We have 2 more exhibition games before they go to Tokyo. We have one on Friday against Australia again, and then Sunday against Spain. But Tokyo Olympics are starting July 24th for them. All around, things need to change. We need to see better. But again, chemistry and all this stuff, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. When you have a bunch of stars playing, and obviously I feel like we have a ton of shooters instead of focusing on our height in this, that kind of plays a role, but we'll see how things go. Someone's making bank if they picked Nigeria and Australia money line. Yes, would love to know if anybody actually cashed a ticket on that. I feel like if you just put $5 on that just out of pure, let's see if this ever happens, you obviously would have made a ton of money. All right, what else do we have going on today? We have the All-Star game, American League versus the National League. Everybody is talking about Ohtani. Literally everyone and every sports show is talking about Ohtani. So as for the American League, as you can see, for the run line, minus 1.5 plus 152, money line minus 102, and the total at 11. So as for this, let's get through some trends that I found for you guys. Sorry, I have so many notes. I have 19 pages of notes right now, so I'm trying to find some of these trends that I'm mentioning. So last night, we'll start off with the home run derby. As you know, Pete Alonso won that back-to-back, third player to do so. He had 74 total home runs, which is the second most in a single home run derby. This entire event last night, 208 home runs, 3 of which broke the record of 513 feet. So tonight we have the All-Star game. And a lot of people, again, like I mentioned, talking about Shohei Ohtani. He's going to start for the American League. He will also bat leadoff for the AL. He's the first hitter of the game. He made history as the first MLB player to make an All-Star team as both a hitter and a pitcher. He'll be going off facing Max Scherzer. In terms of money line, like I mentioned, the National League is favored, which might be a little surprising to some people, given that the AL team has won the last 7 games, 19-3-1 in the last 23 overall to be exact. The total open 10.5 has been bet up. As for a trend here, 19-3-1 in the last 23 games overall to be exact. 11-3 in the MLB All-Star games dating back to 2006 in terms of hitting the under. So a little surprising that's being bet up, and a little surprising that the American League is an underdog. Basically, not really. I mean, they're minus 102 compared to minus 116. But all around, all the trends are screaming towards the under and the AL to win. It's Mr. Jack Moon saying I had too much faith in him last night. I know he got knocked out. It was a great night if you were taking the underdogs in the home run derby, for sure. And obviously, everybody gets amped up for that. It's weird not having MLB games. I was actually just talking to my team today, like no NBA games, no WNBA games. We don't have a full slate of MLB. It's kind of like that lull time, I feel like, in the summer, in the middle of July, where before the Olympics, things are kind of a little bit quiet. Obviously, the All-Star game is fun, and it's this and that, but you can't really, I don't know. There's not as many trends I feel like that you can follow as opposed to talking about some of their games. But yeah, I feel like there's also some other things that we can get to. So for the NL, the Padres shortstop Fernando Tatis, he will be in. He'll be joined by Juan Soto, Max Scherzer pitching, like I mentioned. Braves star Ronald Acuna Jr., he will not be playing this after he suffered that knee injury. And Jacob deGrom will not be playing. Woodruff will not be playing. And Gausman, they'll be missing the game. So there are some people in terms of the NL that won't be in it. But yeah, you can bet into this game. There's a ton of different things. Same game parlay, innings, first half, hit and runs. So many different things you can bet on for this. Let's close this out. Remove. But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to mention, obviously we just had Brandon on before, is for the Open. This is exciting. Last major of the year. Jon Rahm, obviously a clear favorite here, plus 750. Then you have Koepka, 16-1. Xander Schauffele, 18-1, same as JT. And then Jordan Spieth, 18-1 as well. Rory McIlroy, 22-1. As we know, last year when this was in Ireland, he missed the cut. That was pretty devastating, especially considering he was from Ireland. But as I mentioned, last major of the season, this will be the 15th time that these players will play on this course. First time since 2011 when Darren Clarke won the major title. Phil Mickelson and Jon Rahm, obviously they won the US PGA and the US Open. Just obviously wanted to mention that. They'll be playing. Hideki Matsuyama will not be playing, the Masters champion. He was forced to have to withdraw after contracting COVID-19. So that's not good to hear there. But as for this course, it is a par 70. And from what I've been reading, you should definitely be checking up on the weather. It seems like it's a really tough course based on a lot of the bunkers and where the holes are placed. I also read that the fairways are very wide, rough green, depending on if it's raining, and that it's not going to be something where these players are shooting way under. There's only one player, Greg Norman, that was able to record a double-digit winning score of 13 under back in 1993 on this course. So it really does depend on conditions. So I'd kind of wait to bet on some of these markets until tomorrow. Obviously, live betting golf is the best way to go if you're able to do that. But yeah, as for some of these top players, so Jon Rahm, he's the favorite, as I mentioned. He won the US Open and had a solid ball striking week in Scotland. As for Brooks Koepka, a lot of people talking about him. He had 3 top 10 finishes in the past 4 Open championships. He's finished inside the top 5 and 3 the last 4 starts, including second at the PGA Championship and 4th at the US Open. He's the only player, this is kind of an advantage for him, that got his start on the European Tour. So that gives him a little bit of exposure to some of these greens. So that'll help him against some other Americans. Some other things that I've been reading in terms of some random players I'm going to throw out here. Mark Leishman, he's a long shot. He finished 6th or better in 3 of the last 6 Open starts. The reason I'm mentioning this is because it makes a lot of sense for this Open to kind of look at the tour players that don't really play. Like, for example, all these top guys like Jon Rahm, let's say even Xander, JT, and all these guys, if they haven't been playing in these types of conditions, I would look at somebody who's done really well on this course, or somebody obviously who's playing in the European Tour, like I just mentioned with Brooks Koepka getting his start there. That'll help you kind of produce good results and looking at who did well in the previous years, in my eyes, as opposed to just who's the best in the world right now. Whoever hits the ball the longest, it seems like, is going to be the one that wins the Open. So exciting stuff there. Some other guys, Jordan Spieth, star at the tournament, never missed a cut in 7 attempts. He also has 3 top 10 finishes during that stretch. Bryson DeChambeau, his best finish in the Open was tied 51st in 2018. So this is what I mean by some of the top guys have either missed the cut or X, Y, and Z. But we have the Open going on. That starts Thursday. Tomorrow, guys, we have game 4. The NBA tonight, we had the MLB All-Star game. And then on top of that, we also have USA men's Olympic team playing. All these odds right now available on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Thank you guys for joining today. Unfortunately, I won't be on the rest of the week, but I'll be back on starting Monday of next week. So I'll see you guys then.